The first thing Elias noticed was the silence, not the ordinary kind. The prairie was always quiet in winter, but this was different, heavy, unnatural, like the world itself was holding its breath. Then he saw it, a wagon, half buried in snow, tilted at an awkward angle, its broken wheel sticking up like a snapped bone. It sat alone in the middle of endless white, miles from anywhere. No tracks, no movement, just stillness. Elias Carter pulled his horse to a slow stop. The wind howled across the plains, sharp enough to cut through wool and leather. But even it seemed to avoid the wreck. Something's wrong, he muttered. His gut already knew. He dismounted, boots crunching against frozen ground, and walked toward the wagon. Each step felt heavier than the last. He had seen death before, too much of it. But this felt different. Two bodies lay near the wreck. A man, a woman, frozen stiff, dusted with snow. Their faces turned away from each other, as if even death hadn't brought them peace. The man's hand was stretched toward the wagon, fingers curled, as though he had tried to reach something or someone. Elias removed his hat. For a moment, he just stood there, head bowed. "I don't know your names," he said quietly, voice rough from the cold, "but I hope you found mercy at the end." The wind answered him with a hollow cry. He turned toward the wagon. Clothes were scattered across the snow. A cracked lantern, a small wooden box, split open, a blanket frozen stiff against the side. And then a sound, so faint he almost missed it. A soft rustle. Elias froze. He listened again. There it was, coming from beneath the torn canvas, still tied over the wagon bed. His heart slammed hard against his ribs. He moved fast. The canvas was stiff with ice, but he tore it back with both hands, sending snow scattering into the air. And then he saw her, a child, a little girl, curled into herself beneath the wreckage, wrapped in a thin blanket that had long since lost its warmth. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Her face was pale, too pale, lips tinged blue, strands of dark hair stuck to her cheeks. But her eyes were open, wide, watching him. No tears, no sound, just watching. In her arms, she clutched a ragged cloth doll, so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Elias's breath caught. "God," he whispered, "she shouldn't have been alive. Not out here, not in this cold, not after however many nights she had endured alone beside the dead. But she was, barely." He reached toward her slowly, careful, like approaching a frightened animal. "It's all right," he said, voice softer now. "You're safe." The girl didn't move, didn't blink, but when his hand touched her shoulder, she flinched, hard. Elias pulled back instantly, pain flashing across his face. Hey, he murmured. "I ain't gonna hurt you." Her eyes searched his, not trusting, not believing, but too weak to run. He swallowed hard, then gently shrugged off his heavy coat and wrapped it around her small, trembling body. She was so light when he lifted her, it felt like holding nothing at all. Still, she made no sound, no cry, no word, only those eyes, locked onto his face as if trying to understand what he was, friend or something worse. He carried her to his horse and mounted quickly, pulling her close against his chest, shielding her from the wind. Her tiny fingers grabbed his shirt, tight, desperate, like she was holding on to the last thing in the world. Elias looked down at her. For a moment, something shifted inside him, something he thought had died years ago. "I've got you now," he said quietly. Then, after a pause, a promise he didn't plan, but couldn't stop. "I'll be your father." The words hung in the freezing air. Not a question, a vow. Behind them, distant howls echoed across the plains. Wolves, closing in. Elias tightened his grip around the girl and kicked his horse into motion. The storm was coming again, and this time he wasn't riding alone. By the time Elias reached his cabin, the storm had returned. Snow lashed sideways across the prairie, blinding and relentless. The wind howled like something alive, chasing them all the way to the door. Elias dismounted quickly, lifting the girl into his arms. She didn't resist, Didn't move at all except a faint tremble running through her small body. Almost there, he murmured, though he wasn't sure she could hear him. He kicked the door open and stepped inside. Cold, the kind of cold that settled into bones and stayed there. The cabin hadn't held life in a long time. Just one room, a stone fireplace, a rough table, a bed that had seen too many lonely nights. Elias laid the girl down gently. Her skin was freezing. He moved fast, went into the fireplace. Flint struck. Sparks caught. Flames rose slowly, then stronger, until the room began to glow with heat. Still not enough. He grabbed every blanket he owned, old, worn, but dry, and layered them over her. Then he pulled off her frozen shoes, her damp stockings careful, gentle. The moment his hand brushed her ankle, she flinched again. Hard. Elias froze. A shadow passed across his face. Easy, he whispered. You're safe here. But her eyes? Still watching him. Still afraid. Not of the storm. Of him. That cut deep in the cold. He turned away, busying his hands. He filled a pot with water, added what little broth he had left, and set it over the fire. Minutes passed. The cabin slowly warmed. The girl's shivering softened, but didn't stop. Elias knelt beside her, holding a cup carefully. You need this, he said, voice low. Just a little. He lifted the cup toward her lips. She turned her face away. Not stubborn, not defiant, afraid. Deep learned fear. Elias didn't move for a long second. Then slowly, he lowered the cup. All right, he said quietly. We'll do it your way. He poured a little water into his hands and held them out instead. She hesitated. Her eyes flickered between his face and his hands. Then slowly, she leaned forward, drank, like something wounded, like something that had learned not to trust anything given too easily. Elias swallowed hard. Good, he whispered. That's good. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Time passed quietly after that. The fire cracked. The storm raged outside. Inside, the girl lay still beneath the blankets, her small fingers clutching that worn doll like it was the only thing keeping her grounded in the world. Elias sat beside the bed, watching, not sleeping, not moving, just watching. His eyes drifted across the cabin, to the corner, where a small wooden cradle sat, covered in dust. He hadn't touched it in years, hadn't been able to. His jaw tightened. I couldn't save them, he whispered into the silence. The words felt heavy, old, broken. Then his gaze returned to the girl, still breathing, still here, a fragile thread of life, refusing to snap. His voice softened. But I can save you. The firelight flickered across her face. For a brief moment her expression changed. Not fear, not pain, something quieter, something uncertain, as if, for the first time in a long while, she was beginning to believe she might survive. Morning came quietly. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world buried in white. The prairie stretched endless and silent beneath a pale sky, as if nothing had ever happened. Inside the cabin, the fire had burned low. Elias stirred awake in the chair beside the bed, his neck stiff, his back aching. For a moment, he didn't remember why he hadn't slept properly. Then he saw her. The girl was sitting up, watching him. The same wide, guarded eyes, but clearer now, more alive. When he shifted slightly, she quickly looked away. Elias exhaled slowly. You hungry? He asked gently. No answer. But she didn't turn away completely this time. That was something. He stood, stretching the stiffness from his limbs, and moved to the stove. He worked quietly, not wanting to startle her. Oats, water, a small spoon of honey. It wasn't much, but it was warm. He set the bowl near her on the bed. You can eat when you're ready. Then he stepped back, gave her space. The girl stared at the bowl for a long moment, then at him, as if asking permission. Elias nodded once. Slow, gentle. She reached for the spoon. Her hands trembled, but she managed. Small bites. Careful, like she expected it to be taken away at any moment. Elias watched, something heavy settling in his chest. No one's going to take it, he said quietly. She didn't respond, but her grip on the spoon loosened just a little. When she finished, She placed the bowl down neatly, then sat still again. Silent. Elias hesitated, then spoke. Got a name? The question hung in the air. For a moment, he thought she might not answer at all. Her fingers tightened around the doll in her lap. Her lips parted slightly. Then, Lily. The voice was barely there. Rough, unused, but real. Elias felt something shift inside him. Lily, he repeated softly. That's a good name. She didn't look at him, but she didn't hide either. Progress. Slow but real. Elias grabbed his coat and handed it to her. It's big, he said, but it'll keep you warm. She slipped her arms into it without a word. The sleeves swallowed her hands completely. For the first time, she almost looked like a child again. Come on, Elias said gently. There's something we got to do. The ride back to the wagon was quiet. Lily sat in front of him on the saddle, wrapped in his coat, her small body still fragile but steadier than before. When they reached the site, she went still. The wagon remained half-buried, the bodies untouched, frozen in time. Elias dismounted. Lily didn't move at first. Then slowly she slid down beside him. Her hand found his sleeve. Held on. Elias didn't say anything. He just covered her hand with his. Then he started digging. The ground was hard, frozen solid. Every strike of the shovel echoed through the empty land. His hands burned, then numbed, then burned again. But he didn't stop. Not once. Lily stood nearby, watching, silent. When the graves were ready, Elias carefully carried the man first, then the woman. He laid them side by side, together, the way they should have been. He removed his hat, spoke a quiet prayer. When he finished, Lily stepped forward, slow, unsteady. She knelt beside the woman's grave. For a moment, she just stared. Then, with trembling hands, she placed her doll on the snow, right above the mound. Elias's breath caught. That yours? He asked softly. Lily nodded, didn't look up, didn't take it back. It was the first thing she had let go of. Elias understood. Some things weren't meant to be carried forever. He stepped closer, gently offering his hand. After a long pause, she took it, and this time she didn't hesitate. They rode into town by late afternoon. Red Hollow wasn't much, just a handful of buildings stitched together by mud roads and hard lives. A general store, a blacksmith, a doctor's clinic, and a sheriff who trusted more in instinct than law. But it was enough. Enough to ask questions. Enough to cause trouble. People noticed the moment Elias rode in. They always did. But this time it wasn't just him. It was the girl, small, fragile, sitting in front of him like she belonged there. Whispers started before he even dismounted. Where'd she come from? Whose kid is that? Elias never had a family. Elias ignored them. He lifted Lily down carefully. Her fingers clung to his coat for a second before letting go. It's all right, he murmured. Stay close. She nodded faintly. That was new. They stepped into the clinic. The bell above the door chimed softly. Dr. Harris looked up from his desk and froze. Elias, he said. What happened? Found her, Elias replied. Wagon north of the ridge. Parents didn't make it. The doctor's face darkened. He stood immediately. Bring her here. Lily hesitated. Her eyes darted around the room, then back to Elias. He placed a steady hand on her shoulder. You're safe. After a moment, she walked forward. Slow, careful. Dr. Harris worked gently, checking her pulse, listening to her breathing, not rushing, not forcing. She's weak, he said quietly. Malnourished, exhausted, but she's strong. He looked at Elias. She'll live. Elias let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Before he could respond, the door opened again. Sheriff Cole stepped inside. Tall, stern, watching everything. His eyes landed on Lily first, then shifted to Elias. Heard you brought a child into town, he said. I did. Where from? Wagon wreck. 3 miles out. The sheriff nodded slowly. And now? Elias didn't hesitate. She stays with me? Silence filled the room. Heavy, uncomfortable. Sheriff Cole studied him for a long moment. Then his gaze dropped to Lily. She had moved closer to Elias again, holding on to him, like she already knew this was the only place she felt safe. The sheriff sighed. This ain't simple, Elias. I didn't figure it would be. There was a pause. Then, a quiet voice, small but steady. Don't make me go. Everyone looked at Lily. Her grip tightened on Elias's hand. Tears filled her eyes, but didn't fall. Please. Elias's jaw clenched. The sheriff looked between them. Then finally, he nodded once. All right, he said. For now. And just like that, everything changed. For a few days, peace returned. Lily began to move around the cabin more freely. Still quiet, still careful, but no longer frozen in fear. She fed the chickens, sat by the fire, watched Elias work like she was learning a world she'd never been allowed to live in. Sometimes, he caught her almost smiling. Almost. And that was enough. Until the rider came. It was late afternoon. Elias was outside splitting wood when he heard the sound of hooves. Slow, deliberate. Not a traveler. Someone who knew exactly where they were going. He set the axe down, turned. The man rode in without hesitation. Clean coat, polished boots. No dust, no struggle. Like the land itself didn't touch him. Elias didn't like him immediately. You Elias Carter? The man asked, dismounting. I am. The man brushed imaginary dirt from his sleeve. Name's Victor Hale. Something in his tone felt wrong. Sharp, cold. I'm here for the girl. Elias went still. What girl? Victor smiled faintly. The one you found. Lily. The way he said her name, like it belonged to him. Elias stepped forward, blocking the path to the cabin. She's not yours. Victor reached into his coat and pulled out folded papers. Actually, he said calmly, she is. He handed them over. Legal documents. Stamped. Signed. Elias's grip tightened as he read. Her mother was my sister, Victor continued. Makes me her closest living relative. Elias looked up, eyes hard. Funny, you weren't there when she was freezing to death. Victor's expression didn't change. I wasn't aware she was alive. And now you are. Yes. A pause. Then, I'll be taking her. No. The word came fast. Firm. Final. Victor tilted his head slightly. You don't have a say. Before Elias could respond, the cabin door creaked open. Lily stepped outside. The moment her eyes landed on Victor, everything changed. The color drained from her face. Her body went rigid. Then she ran, straight to Elias, grabbing his arm, clutching tight. Don't let him take me, she whispered, voice shaking. Elias knelt slightly, steadying her. I won't, he said. Victor watched them, unimpressed. Lily, he said smoothly, you don't remember me, but I'm your uncle. No, she said instantly, barely a breath, but certain. You're not. Victor's smile faded. This isn't about feelings, he said coldly. It's about law. Elias stood, moved slightly in front of her, shielding her. Then we'll settle it by law. Victor nodded once. Good. He stepped back, adjusting his coat. Court hearing. 1 week. His eyes flicked to Lily. You'll come with me then. Lily shook her head, gripping Elias tighter. Victor didn't react, just turned and mounted his horse. As he rode away, his voice carried on the wind. You can't keep what isn't yours. Silence fell again. Heavy, cold. Lily trembled against Elias. Is he going to take me? She asked. Elias looked down at her, at the fear in her eyes, at the way she held on to him like he was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. His chest tightened. I told you, he said quietly. I won't let anyone take you. But as he looked toward the horizon, where Victor had disappeared, Elias knew the truth. This time, it wouldn't be a storm he could outrun. The courtroom was nothing more than the town church. Wooden benches, dust in the air, a silence so thick it pressed against every breath. But that day, it felt like the whole world was watching. Lily sat beside Elias, her small hand locked tightly in his. She hadn't let go since they walked in. Not once. Across the room, Victor Hale sat with his lawyer, calm, confident, certain. like he had already won. Elias could feel it, the weight of it. He had no lawyer, no papers, no blood ties, just a promise, and a little girl who believed in him. Judge Harper stepped forward, his voice firm. This court would decide custody of the child, Lily Hale. Lily flinched slightly at the name. Elias felt it, squeeze her hand gently. Victor's lawyer stood first. Your Honor, this is a simple matter. My client is the child's only living relative. He has legal standing, financial stability, and a proper home, Mr. Elias Carter. He glanced at Elias with faint dismissal. Has no claim beyond emotion. Murmurs spread across the room. The judge raised a hand. Mr. Carter, he said, do you have representation? Elias stood slowly. No, sir. Then speak. Elias looked down at Lily, then back at the judge. I found her alone, he said, in the cold, beside her dead parents. The room went still. She wasn't crying, he continued, wasn't asking for help, just waiting. His voice tightened slightly, like she already knew no one was coming. Lily's grip on his hand tightened. But she lived, Elias said, and I made her a promise. He paused, not for effect, but because it mattered. I told her I'd be her father. Silence. Heavy. Real. Victor's lawyer scoffed softly. A promise doesn't make a parent. No, Elias replied, but showing up every day does. A few heads in the crowd nodded. Mrs. Green from the general store stood suddenly. Your Honor, she said, that man has lived alone for years. Never asked for anything. But I've seen that girl with him. She laughs now. Dr. Harris stepped forward next. She was traumatized, he said, afraid of everything. Now she's healing. That doesn't come from money. That comes from care. Even Sheriff Cole spoke. I had my doubts, he admitted, but that girl chose him the moment she had the chance. Victor's jaw tightened. This is irrelevant. His lawyer snapped. The law is clear. I want to speak. The voice cut through everything. Small, but unshakable. Lily stood. Her hand slipped from Elias's, but only so she could step forward. The judge nodded. Go ahead, child. She looked at Victor, then at the judge, then at Elias. Tears filled her eyes. But this time, she didn't hold them back. He doesn't love me, she said, pointing at Victor. He didn't come when I was cold. He didn't come when I was alone. Her voice broke, but she kept going. He came now because he wants me. A pause, then softer, but I choose him. She turned, pointing at Elias. He stayed. The room fell completely silent. The judge leaned back, studying her, then Elias, then Victor. A long moment passed. Then the gavel struck. Custody is granted to Elias Carter. Gasps, then relief, then quiet joy spreading through the room. Victor Hale's claim is dismissed. Lily didn't wait. She ran back to Elias, throwing her arms around him. This time, she cried, not from fear, but from finally being safe. Elias held her tight, closing his eyes. You're home, he whispered. Weeks later, the papers were signed. Official, final, Lily Carter. That evening, they sat outside the cabin, watching the sun melt into gold across the prairie. Pa, she said softly. Elias looked at her. Yeah. Did you mean it? What? When you said you'd be my father. Elias smiled. Not a sad one, not a broken one, a real one. I meant the moment I said it. Lily leaned against him. Safe, warm, finally home, and for the first time in years, Elias wasn't alone anymore.